Dizzy Gillespie had come through town. I did a film with him for PBS station in LA. And then with that finished film, I went in to visit Lightning Hopkins at the Ashgrove with a projector in hand and said, Lightning, I'd like to do a film on you. Would you like to do it? And he said, yeah, pay me enough money. I had a young intern who was, his father had advanced him some money to try to help the kid out with his life. He was kind of struggling at that point. And we told Lightning we had some money, and he agreed, and so we went down and shot Lightning. And then having done that, and paid off my lab bills, I was here in Chicago. Yeah, in Chicago. The Chicago Folk Festival at the University of Chicago. And I went in there, and I had Dewey Boffa was playing, and I went backstage and told him I liked his music and I'd like to do a film on Cajuns. And he said, well, we'd be glad to help you out. Would you like some moonshine? I said, yeah. So they had a gallon jug of moonshine. And we sipped moonshine, and he told stories to me, and I became enthused, and off I went to Louisiana to start spending it all. While I was there, I learned about the black French-speaking people and their music, and then that's sort of went like that over the years. I went from one culture to another, doing music in between. Like I did a rock film that's going to show when and where.
Saturday at Columbia College, 7 o'clock p.m. film room.
And the money from that helped me finish the Dry Wood and Hot Pepper. I told you it's going to be a long story, but it goes on like that.
Have you been back to Louisiana since Katrina?
Yeah, I've been back to New Orleans a couple times. And I was in Cajun country about 2 years ago, I guess.
Did you see a lot of effects of the Post-Katrina on the urban landscape?
Well, I went into the 9th Ward and saw a lot of recovery going on, and there's still a lot of trashed out houses still to be removed or totally rebuilt or destroyed, whatever. It's not anywhere like it was, I understand, in the year or two after it struck.
Could you talk a little bit about your working method at the time? Because you were shooting 16mm with the sound separately. Like, would you go in with a particular idea? Would you just follow people about? How did you approach this?
Well, I wanted to get close to the people, so I would like to stay with them. I couldn't afford a hotel, for one thing. I didn't have any money. During this whole period, I never had more than $5,000 in my bank account, if that much. I was always broke. And by living in their houses, eating at their tables, you could get close to people real quick. And the Ardoin family put me up for off and on over a 6-week period. And I rented a room in a boarding house in a black neighborhood in Breaux Bridge. So I divided the time between Breaux Bridge and Mamou. And just had the camera always loaded and sitting and waiting, and then I would just look around for things to shoot. People got used to me hanging around, and they didn't pay me any attention. The cops had some trouble with me, and we resolved that. That's a story I'm not going to go into today, but it's a long, interesting story.
Did you ever, I know when you're shooting and involved in the families, like there's a lot of moonshine and drinking and whatnot, how were you able to, or were you able to control yourself enough to be able to shoot?
And not drink?
Yeah.
I couldn't. I didn't.
I mean, was that a problem then for the people that you were shooting? Because you weren't actually, I'm sure they wanted you to partake because you were part of the family, or, part of the scene. So how did you handle that?
Well, I have a fairly high tolerance for booze. I've been practicing at it for years. And, I managed to more or less maintain and keep able to shoot. If it got too bad, sometimes I would, my filming would suffer. Like you would expose a roll of film and put it in the wrong can. And then in a hurry, you would pick up the same can thinking it was unexposed. I hadn't wrapped the tape around it properly. I thought it was brand new. And opened it up and then looked, oh my God, and it's all exposed.
Some of us don't have to be drunk to do that. Yes.
What's the most interesting food that you had while there?
Oh, I liked it all. I wasn't there, but doing the Texas Mexican film, we had chitlins. Like the chitlins down in Louisiana, they just boil them, and sometimes, and that was a little strange to my taste. It's kind of funky. But in the Mexican border country, they grilled them I guess they boil them and then they would grill them, and those were delicious. They got kind of crackly and tasty.
Yes.
You're from Tampa, and I'm from Sarasota. I was wondering if you had made any films in Florida, or have any plans to?
I would like to, and I wish I had. Somehow I never quite got back to that area when I went east to do films. Did mostly Texas and Louisiana, and more recently Alabama and South Georgia.
What would you film, or who would you film in Florida if you were to shoot today?
I'm sorry?
Or who would you film in Florida if you were to go?
I really can't say. I haven't been back that much to find out what's going on down there. I did a film on Cuban Americans, and I showed the finished film in Miami, and a lot of Cuban musicians living down there, and they asked me to do a film on them, but I didn't really feel ready to do another film on Cubans at that point. I did do one in Cuba itself called Roots of Rhythm. It's a 3-hour special with Harry Belafonte. I started off shooting and directing, but after the shooting was done, I got sort of edged off of the production. They ran out of money, so they paid themselves and stopped paying me. But it's a pretty good film, I think, even though I didn't do all the directing. Yeah.
Is that a pretty typical story? Doing things sort of independently and working once in a while with bigger corporations that might basically take your project away from you? I mean, would you rather just do it all yourself?
I would rather keep control if I could, but it doesn't always work that way. Like the film I did on Leon Russell, the one that's going to show here, which is a secret. When the film is finished, they own the film, and I just barely had the rights to show I wrote a clause into my contract, worried about if I did all this work. I spent 2 years living with them and editing the film. If I finished and they got mad at me or something, I'd want to be able to at least have something to show for all this effort. So I wrote into the contract my rights to own the copy of the film, show it on special occasions and non-commercially when I was present with the film. And so that's how I've been able to show the film the few times that I show it every year. There's a couple other films that ended unhappily as well.
Is there a Neil Young film?
Pardon me?
Is there a Neil Young film out there?
No, I never got involved with him. I did a world tour of Huey Lewis and the News. I did complete a film on him, making a music video called Stuck With You that did air on TV, MTV, and on Bravo, I believe. It wasn't bad. It was pretty interesting. We went down to the Bahamas and had a good time. But then they liked the film so much, they wanted me to stick around and spend a year traveling with them all over the world. Japan and all over Europe and all over the U.S. And then they got mad at me and fired me. I did something I shouldn't have done. So I was out on that one. I had nothing to show for that. Not that I was that much in love with the project in the beginning. But.
What's the story? So it's the Ry Cooder one that you have.
Oh, that one, Ry asked me, Ry had come to Texas with me and Chris Strockwitz, the owner of our Hooli Records, because he wanted to get close to Flaco Jimenez. He liked his music and wanted to get to know him and maybe get Flaco to work with his band. So he asked Chris if he could tag along with us, and he spent a week or two down the border partying with us and going to the filming and getting to know Flaco. And then a few years later, he brought Flaco out to perform with him and Jim Keltner on drums and several other great musicians in a little small tour they were going to do. And asked me to do a film on their concert. And I did do the film, but however, for reasons he never explained to me, he didn't want the film shown. I showed it in Munich at their film festival, and then was invited to Toronto to show it, and then Bry put his foot down and said, no more showing of this film. And he never would answer why not. But now, after some 20 years, I'm doing a retrospective at the Pacific Film Archives in in Berkeley. And I asked Bry if I could show the film there, and he finally responded and said, yeah, if you cut out my interview at the beginning of the film and change the title. So now it's going to show for the first time in 20 years.
That's exciting.
In July or August. So hopefully he will let me also release a DVD with the same version.
There, you didn't interview, like, it was mainly focused on the men.
Yeah.
And in the second film, it seemed like you interviewed more women, but I heard a woman interviewing them. Was it because, like, you thought maybe it was inappropriate for you to be doing that close interaction with them?
I'm having trouble hearing the last thing you were saying.
Well, I was wondering why.
Why no women in the first one?
Yeah.
The men were jealous. And if they saw me talking to the women, they got irritated. And I didn't want to offend anybody. And at the parties, the women stuck together. The men stuck together. And it'd be weird just to walk into a group of women and try to observe them or interact with them, because it didn't float with those people. The second time I came down, I had a falling out with my partner, and we were not working together anymore, and I was desperate for help. And I hired a young woman who was just graduating in anthropology from the University of Michigan. She wanted to learn ethnographic musicological filmmaking, and I said, come on down, I'll put you to work. So I taught her how to use the Niagara on the spot. In fact, in dry wood, when you see the calf standing up, and the music gets slow and it gets speeding up, that was her learning how to use a Niagara, but she put it on the wrong speed. And when you're recording people talking, it's got to take a lot of tape, you put it on a low quality so you get more tape. So she was still on the low quality version, and then she realized her mistake and switched the switch to high speed, and then you could hear this change in speed. And somehow it became a match to the little calf standing up. I kind of like that. And what was the rest of the question? Oh yeah,
What are you making now?
Huh?
What are you thinking about making now? I think she.
Oh, now?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about a film in Southeast Asia on a fruit called the durian, which is about this big. It's called the king of fruits, and it's the most nutritious of all fruits or vegetables. Has the highest percentage of protein. It's highly aromatic. In fact, some people think it stinks, and it's against the law to take one into a hotel in Singapore and parts of Indonesia. It's also against the law to take one on a public transportation in Singapore. You go to jail if you attempt to do
that in
this.
Thailand too, signs on the doors saying no durian.
That's right. And it's you either hate it or you love it. And it's also used at funerals in the back country where there's no electricity or refrigeration, and the body, and it's also hot and humid, and corpses start smelling pretty quickly. So they would put durians in the parlor with the body, and the smell of the durian would overpower the body. And I think maybe there's some unconscious association between the two. I don't know. It's also an aphrodisiac. And carrying on, it's a favorite fruit of the orangutans in Sumatra. And this is a place highly threatened by overdevelopment and encroachment on their resources. So that film would give me a chance to do more work with that area, which I'm concerned about. And there's another reason too. Well, yes, it's being biogenetically engineered in Thailand to create a version that doesn't smell and also will ripen quicker than the competitors in Malaysia. So it'd be a chance to dip into the field of bioengineering, genetically modified food.
I had a non-film question, I hope. Just one particular scene in the second film during the Mardi Gras with the costumes, and the people were throwing the coins and people were picking them up, and then they gave them back. They said they had to give them back. What, I didn't understand what that was about. And then my second thing was just in general, even though the cultures seem really separate, they seem so similar. I mean, they were based essentially on the same land, and you do the same things to survive on that same land. So I just, sort of a general comment. Maybe you could.
Yeah, well, we did have Chris Rockwitz, who owns our Hurley Records, wanted me to help him make a film, supposedly a definitive film on the Cajun and the Creole culture, where we filmed both the black and the white and tried to delineate the similarities and the differences between the two.
Yeah.
And where they over-merged. They merged, the whites borrowed a lot from the blacks, and vice versa, the blacks took a lot from the whites. So you have the Cajun culture right alongside the Creole culture, and they're always exchanging aspects, and now they're becoming more, it's less tension than there was in the past, but there's still a little bit lingering. But you can go to the dances now, either black or white, and you'll find people with other colors there as well, having a good time, treated quite nicely.
What was the scene with the coins?
Well, the idea was they sing that song, which is an ancient Druid song, actually goes back for centuries. In Europe, you can find that same tune. But it's a begging song where they go around begging for money or food to make a communal gumbo. And so if you don't have rice or chicken or onions or carrots or whatever is needed for the gumbo, you give them money. So with that money, they go and buy rice from the store. That's all.
But in that scene, they gave it back, right? Didn't they guys say, no, maybe?
I think he was maybe just collecting it
Oh, okay.
like a bunch of people took it off the ground, and I think maybe he was collecting it. Is
Yeah,
that
they gave it to the leader, the captain of the crew.
Okay. I get it.
And he went in and bought a big bag of rice.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for. Thank you so much, guys.